Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of American Scouser TV's Fantasy Premier League show. A live edition with myself and the Polish Prince coming to you somewhere from outside of Chicago as we prepare to review match week 12 on my side of things and take a look into match week 13, which is going to be interesting depending on where you are with your chips, how you're standing, and exactly how you feel about your side. We'll start this show like we start every one of our shows with a quick reminder that the American Scouser Cup is still open and available for you to jump into. So if you would like to join and match your wits with the rest of the American Scouser team, we would appreciate you doing that. And all you have to do is go to the manual join, type in the code on your screen, and we will see your name someday, hopefully near the top of a leaderboard. So, Matus, how are we doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay, man. I'm just hitting green arrow after green arrow each week, just slowly inching my way up, trying to break into the six-figure mark. I'm very close, about 300,000 spots away. I told you I'd catch up to you, and I don't care if it takes until the 38th game match week. I'm gonna catch up to you. So it's slowly getting there.
There you go. That's the right attitude to have. And if I keep deploying the same strategies I have the last few weeks, you'll have no problem with that because between now and then, I'll take a -4 each week, and that'll be a good 65, 70 points, and that'll make up the gap for you. Yeah, frustration, all accounts, irritating on my part. Nothing I really want it to be doing. I will say we'll bring up the comments right here. We're going to look at the scores in a little bit. I will say I do appreciate, I almost posted in the Discord channel, Jamie, thank you.
Jamie.
Because he asked, I think at one point he talked about how it was a rough week and it was either a free hit or possibly even a wild card. And then he did neither and basically played me in the head to head. Didn't make a move, left Holland as captain. I think another player not playing as vice captain, maybe even Diaz. I looked at that and said, thank you. You know, there are gifts every once in a while. You get one. So, James, I appreciate you. I would appreciate someone showing up and beating my co-host because once again, 500,000 points ahead, 9 spots down in the Premier League table. So let's take a look at the American Scouser Cup currently. And this is an updated table. Guns and Nunez, very good week, 65 on a tough, brutal week. And 737 is no score to laugh at. I think that is top 40,000 or so. I took a quick look before the show started. So if everything was updated, that's really good. Even all the way down to our 9th/10th place finishers at tied for 700 points. Again, respectable score, keeps you in the top, think 200,000 of the overall game. And that just shows you how this game is, the validity of it. I think I'm at 707 right now and I'm around 600,000 and the person in 700,000 or 700 points is just, under 200,000. So you can't get upset or frustrated. You got to really put your head down and just make sure that you're paying attention to your moves and you're finding your differentials. So when you were preparing for last week, Matus, when it came to the, obviously no Arsenal, no City, what was your approach to that week? And before I ask you that question, how frustrating was it when you saw Madison get the yellow card and know that your plan was altered by a really, really dumb decision?
Yeah. Weirdly, I know after that happened, we had some comments in the Discord, and I hadn't really thought of him too highly for this past game week, honestly. I know I probably should have thought of him a little bit more. So when that happened, I was a little perturbed, but not as much as I think someone like you was, because I think you were thinking of captaining him. And it would have been a good captain because, they played the hell out of Leeds today. So it would have been a good shout. But for me, I didn't really see the Maddo situation. If anything, it's more frustrating moving forward than it was this past week, because now I'm kind of in a weird spot of which mids I want to bring in. So going into the blank match week, what I did was before game week 12, in game week 11, I dropped KDB for Rodrigo because in my head, I felt like I wanted to keep Cancelo, Martinelli, and Haaland, no matter what happened. Those were the three. I wasn't going to transfer any of them out. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to transfer out KDB. I might as well do it the week before the blank game week. So then going into the blank game week, I can make another decision. So I dropped down to Rodrigo. Didn't really pay off in the moment, which is fine. But it left me with over $7 million in the bank. And then so going into the blank game week, I went from Rodrigo up to Mo to balance out that premium that I was missing in the lineup for the blank game week. Of course, Mo blanked. He got a clean sheet, got a point, whatever. So it wasn't.
That's blank.
Yeah,
hey, 13 million.
Clean sheet. It gets a point. In hindsight, I should have. I vice captain Trippier, so I thought about captaining him. That would have been pretty cool had I doubled up that 9. But altogether, I think my approach to game week 12, I did what I wanted to do. I kept Martinelli, Haaland, and Cancelo. Had Madison benched as well, so had those 3 that weren't going to get any points. Yes, I started Martinelli, didn't play, but seeing what I got out of it, it worked out for me in the end. And I guess I forgot to mention I took a -4 because I also went from Fofana to Anderson, Joachim Anderson, which, Crystal Palace didn't hold the clean like I thought they would, unfortunately. But that's kind of all together what my game week 12 looked like.
Yeah, I came into the week knowing that my plan was to keep Haaland, Martinelli, and Saliba. I'd had all 3 of them almost. I'd had Martinelli from the kickoff from opening day, and I'd had, I think, Saliba from the 2nd or 3rd week. So I'd made a solid profit on all 3 players, and all 3 would have been players I wanted to bring back in the next 2 to 3 match weeks, if not right after the World Cup. So I was going to take a real financial hit to move any one of them to bring them back because I was going to sell them at half a loss of their profit. So I decided those 3 would be the guys that I would, squander on the bench. And then when Madison went down, it forced me into a double move instead of just one, which was what really frustrated me, let alone the fact I was planning to captain him. I ended up bringing in Trossard, and I had to move out Reece James. Hindsight being 2020, even though I got the clean sheet, I probably could have, I could have just brought in a Dunk, got my clean sheet instead of Van Dijk. I brought in Van Dijk for the goal scoring opportunity, and I just felt really good about Liverpool pulling off a clean sheet in midweek, which happened. And if I had done that, I would have went with Zaha. So it would have been Zaha and Dunk instead of Van Dijk and Trossard. So frustrates me. Zaha is kind of like my 1A to Mitrovic. He's another guy that he doesn't ruin my team because he doesn't pick up red cards or injuries in the first 20 minutes that I pick him up. But he never, ever scores for me or in any way on my fantasy side. And the moment I drop him, he drops 8 to 15 points automatically the next match week. So, for those of you that follow our moves, just pay attention. And if I pick up Mitrovic or Zaha the week after, know I'm going to get rid of them and they will haul. My moves didn't really work out for me. Trossard gets the clean sheet. Point. Van Dijk does get a clean sheet, which is great, but I take a -4. So I'm basically getting 3 points or 4 points, 5 points out of 2 spots. Maybe I could have just made one major transfer. I didn't really have the money in the bank, knowing I was going into the wild card this week. And we'll get to our match week 13 transfers. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at the American Scousers head-to-head league. There was a lot of banter today between my Monday co-hosts, Timuchin and Paul, as they were arguing over who was going to win, who was going to get the right subs in. I don't think either actually knew which player was coming in or why. But that was a tight one. I can't wait to hear the trash talking there. Think we have to start to really call out half of the league that hasn't played since match week 1. I feel like those are the same players that play you each and every week.
Hey man, we've all played the same people.
We'll see about that. Speak of the devil, and he arrives. We are looking fit. We're rolling tight. A live show for the fantasy. And Paul says, null and void. VAR can't do that to the people. It is true. Paul does feel and has a pretty solid gripe of how VAR has not only ruined some real matches this year, it is starting to ruin fantasy matches. And it's just making the drama in the Discord channel that much better. But there were some really good weeks. I mean, Paul had a great week at 52 points. Timichin has a much better team than he realizes. If he probably captain the right people and maybe make some subs in the right order, I think he'd be a lot higher in the standings. So we'll see how this goes from here. I think it's going to be a dogfight right down to the end because honestly, I'm not sure any of us knows what we're talking about. But as we start to look into match week 13, we start to talk about the ins and the outs. So when we let's start with the outs, because I think this does have a lot to do with the fact that people were coming off of that match week where they picked up players they didn't want. There's quite a few folks on the wild card. Mm-hmm. Any names up here that surprise you?
I guess Trossard would be one that surprises me a little bit, just given his recent form. I know Brighton hasn't looked that hot the last couple of weeks. But I feel like at his price point, it's still a pretty decent value to have. So unless you're dropping him for Martinelli, I don't really see where you go to from Trossard is my only thing. So I don't know because there's not another mid-price that's really popping out at us right now besides Tross or Martinelli. So I don't really know where people are going from there. That's the only thing that surprises me. The Kane one, I know it's early too, because we see the numbers in the 5 figures, right? By the beginning of the game week, that's all 6-figure numbers. So maybe the Kane trend continues, but I think people are a little frustrated at the last couple of weeks of, we're not even he had a return last week, right? I mean, it was just this week that he blanked on. And then of course, with Reece and Luis Diaz, they're both hurt, so we don't know. We know the extent of Luis Diaz for the most part. Reece James, we're pretty sure we know the extent of, but yeah, I'm not surprised by Gross. So I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that list shakes up closer to the deadline on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I think James's number is going to keep going up and up. He, from the cost to the fact that it looks like now he won't play again before the World Cup. Chelsea's fixtures actually aren't that great. If you look at the fixture, ratings, they're all 3s,
mm-hmm.
but they have Arsenal and United. And I know they're both at Stamford Bridge, but this isn't like this is vintage Chelsea.
Yeah.
They can be scored on and they can struggle to score. So I think the James loss is big, and I think a lot more will go. Brighton's 3 matches in a row without a goal. And I think that probably is what's scaring folks off. They're just not creating and not scoring. Now, everything that they do that looks bright or positive is all running through Trossard, which to me, I would have thought Gross would be up at the top of this list. I'm a little shocked that Luis Diaz still has 76,000 owners out there to sell him. It's one thing to hold on to a guy with a red arrow that says won't be around till after the World Cup for a week, but for 3,
yeah,
the Kane thing is baffling to me. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is people went off of Holland to Kane and are now going back to Holland.
Yeah.
But it just really, really is a shocker to me. I know you mentioned he didn't score against United. He had 2 glorious chances. Normal Harry Kane buries at least 1, if not both. It's killing him how poor Son is. And I think it should be commended at how good his fantasy numbers are this year. I mean, most people don't realize Kane had given attacking returns in 9 consecutive matches since blanking on opening day. Harry Kane is fantasy Premier League royalty. And if it wasn't for how good Mo Salah has been for the last 2 or 3 years, people would talk about Harry Kane as being one of, up there with Sergio Aguero, as basically one of the greatest fantasy Premier League players of all time. Consistent scoring. I don't know if anyone actually from the striker position averages more points per match played than Harry Kane in the history of this game. And that's that's pretty crazy. And it makes sense. He's going to be the all-time leading scorer in the Premier League when it's all said and done. And they have Bournemouth next. So it's just such a great fixture. Little shocking to me, but let's go take a look at the incomings and maybe we'll see where these managers that are selling are buying. I'll go first on this one. The Foden one is a little bit shocking to me because as well as he's played, and I know there's a lot of value there, I still think there's two better City assets if you're looking around in De Bruyne and Cancelo, unless you're really convinced that Liverpool are back and Mo is the way to go. Again, I can't believe there's 147,000 managers that don't own Haaland. And the others just make total and the others make total sense to me. I mean, I'll let you go into Saka and Martinelli and Almiron. I'd like to spend a little time on Almiron at the end before we move on to looking at our teams for this week. But what do you think about Saka as an option, Foden, Haaland, Martinelli? Where do you think these high buy numbers are coming from?
All great picks, honestly, is what it comes down to. And I think with the Foden situation, I think what some people are doing is that they're finding that extra 3 to 4 million they can get from Foden instead of De Bruyne, they can invest elsewhere. So what I'm seeing a lot of Haaland, Kane, Darwin front three, and then seeing someone like Foden and Saka, Martinelli in the midfield. And that's really exciting. I think if you're in a position to wildcard this week and having the opportunity to go with something like Haaland, Darwin, Kane, Saka, Foden, Martinelli, that is awesome. I think, and that's kind of the position you should almost be going into, because City and Arsenal are two of the top 5 easiest fixtures left before the World Cup. So you definitely want to try and get as many of those assets as you can. And the fact that City has had a week to rest. I know Arsenal played today. Saka picked up a little knock. Arteta says he's fine, so hopefully he'll be okay by the weekend. But I think as a whole, just going back to finding you find the right value for you. And I think part of the whole discussion of which City assets are the best City assets, you kind of have 4 to choose from, right? You've got Haaland, KDB, Foden, Cancelo. Do you want to spend that extra money in the back to have Cancelo? Do you want to spend that extra money in the midfield and get De Bruyne? And maybe to your point, maybe there's some people who are going back to Mo with Forest coming up and feel like Foden at the 8.3 is better than KDB at the I don't know what he's at right now. I probably should have took a look at that before I started talking.
12. Is he
12.3? Yeah,
12.3.
So 4 million cheaper for a guy who has scored more points fantasy-wise than De Bruyne this year. Granted, I know he's had big games, and that really helps with the total points. But it doesn't surprise me that you'd want to save 4 million and have a guy from the same team as one of your attacking assets.
So the bottom name on the list is clearly a little bit of the knee jerk and the high point tally. They're just what they've been seeing. I am just like, this is one that's got me gutted. I think on this show 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were talking, and I was talking about how Eddie Howe loved him. He played 90 minutes every week. Every week he started, no matter what. Like, you can just guarantee if he's healthy, he's in the starting lineup and he's been in the starting lineup for 3 different managers at Newcastle. Yeah. Everyone else complains about him, except for his teammates and the supporters in the crowd, because they love how hard he works. But from a fantasy perspective, he just didn't have an end product. There weren't goals, and there weren't even assists. There was just effort, right? And somewhere along the way, the light bulb clicked. And I saw it, and I said, you know what? He's starting to figure it out. He's getting into really good positions. He's going to score goals. And I had him in my side on a Saturday morning. And I decided, I'm not wasting a transfer getting off of Leon Bailey. He scores goals. He's an international level player. And Miguel Almiron will just piss me off. And since he scored 40 points in 5 weeks. And he's honestly, right now, I don't even he's a perfect foil. You'll see him in my wild card side. He's going to be a bench fodder for me. At 5.3 million, he's a perfect option to come off the bench. It makes absolute sense. And I will say this is where fantasy meets reality. Sometimes in fantasy football, you have to be patient with the assets you pick up and like give them a chance to find their way. And I think that is something to be said, or something to be recognized too in real football, because Newcastle was patient with Miguel Almiron, and now they're reaping the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that you really have to look at sometimes when you make these moves, is that you can't just bring a guy in and if he doesn't score in the first week, transfer him out, because you only get 38 moves a year outside of your wild cards that don't cost you precious places, as we talked about earlier, 50, 60, 70,000 spots in the standings. So I think that these moves do make sense. At one point, I had the team you were talking about almost as my wild card. So I'm excited to kind of look at it. And now I think you're talking me into it. And I'm going to end up with that front three at the end of the day come this weekend. Exciting. One will get sent off. One will get hurt. And the other one better play for Liverpool and get a hat trick. I digress. Let's take a look at the Polish Prince's team. And we will apologize. We're going to figure out ways to get these images a little bigger. Maybe we'll have to do figure out a way to do side-by-sides where we cut the screens in half so we can blow them up a little bit moving forward. But I think we all play the game enough to know which players you had here in your starting lineup. Very similar to the team that goes forward. 45 on a -4 is not a bad week. You're above the average, which is why you saw that green arrow go up. Mm-hmm. You could have captained different players. You dropped the C on Mitrovic or Zaha. It would have been a completely different story, let alone had your vice captain been your captain this week. So what are your plans going into 13? One transfer? No transfers?
Yeah. See, this is where it starts to get really tough. And actually, as we're doing this live show, Foden's price, it's probably not going to show up, but Foden's price just rose up to 8.4. So if you were thinking about getting Foden, you're just a little bit too late if you wanted to miss that price rise. So, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I think I sent you the screen grab of the transfer screen of my team. And I kind of, I guess, was going to talk with you a little bit and see how you felt about this upcoming week, because I want to make a move, and whether it's one of my mids or it's going to be one of my mids. I think I've 0.7 in the bank,
and your bench has Holland, Cancelo,
and Madison. Yeah.
Okay. And your plan here. So let's just say, let's start with, if this is your team,
mm-hmm.
right? If this is your team, clearly Nico is going into bench 3.
Mm-hmm.
Anderson bench 2, or would you play him? Andreas bench 1? Is that probably? Am I getting that probably right?
Yeah, Andreas bench 1. Palace at Everton. I feel pretty good about starting Anderson.
I'd feel pretty good if I was a defensive anything playing against Everton. They just defend for 90 minutes, and they hope the other team will kick it in their own net.
Yep. And I pretty much, so Andreas bench 1. I think Solanke bench 2. Nico bench 3. Dom up against West Ham. I don't know if I feel that great about Bournemouth's odds this weekend. And then they're just starting to kind of, they have Tottenham the week after. So my thoughts revolve around upgrading Dom and downgrading Mo, which I know sounds crazy, but
and taking another -4.
Yes, taking another -4 to bring in Foden for Mo and then bump Solanke up to Darwin. Because I feel like with Forest coming up, and it's going to be one of those things. If I drop down Mo and go to Darwin, Mo's going to hat trick, and Darwin might have an assist. Yep. Whereas if I keep it this way, Darwin's going to net a hat trick. I feel really good about Liverpool's attack, even though historically early Saturday fixtures aren't great for Liverpool. And I think I always have to I try to remind myself that every time I captain Mo on an early Saturday, and then it ends 0-0. And I always say to myself, why the hell did I do that? Because I know they struggle in the early game on the weekend. So where I'm at right now, it's kind of I either shift Madison to Foden, or I take a hit and drop Salah to Foden and then bring in Darwin for Solanke, because I don't want to drop down Salah without having a backup plan for Liverpool against Forest this week, is kind of my thinking.
Yep.
But do I, and that's kind of where I'm stuck, is do I take that? It's a chance. It's a risk that I might be willing to take. It's just a matter of how much do I have in me to actually go for it.
So you'll see in my team that I love the shout of getting Darwin into your side. I've been thinking about it. I've been telling you for 3 or 4 weeks, the only reason I'm willing to sell all these players is that I have my wild card in my pocket to go back to when Liverpool looks like Liverpool again. So I like the idea. I don't know it's worth a -4, to be totally honest with you. Because I think Madison to Foden in a one-way transfer makes your team just as strong for this week, even dropping Solanke to the bench.
Okay.
I don't know that you actually make the 4 points up dropping Mo Salah just to get Darwin in. Because honestly, if Darwin goes and bangs in 2 goals, there's a good chance Mo picks up an assist on it. And if there's a penalty, then Mo probably takes it. And I think he's starting to look better. I do think he's going to keep playing through the middle. So I really feel like if you were going to make a move, you could go Madison out. There's no reason that you can't just keep Madison too. I mean, he's almost fixture proof. He can score against anyone.
Yeah, and then playing Wolves away, it's not a bad fixture right now.
No, the one I would question is do you have too much money wrapped up in Perisic right now? He's not scoring. They're not even keeping clean sheets. And there's no guarantee, even if he gets a start, he'll actually reach 60 minutes with Conte's notorious 55 to 58 minute substitution patterns on the wings.
Sure.
I was, fingers crossed, thought that Conte was going to start Perisic on the right wing against United. And I was just like, this is going to be awesome. He's going to score a goal, get an assist, and a clean sheet. And it's just going to be like a 21-point haul. And then we all saw that I was 20 points overinflated. And I think Perisic is he's what everyone's afraid not to have. And the truth is, no one has needed all season long.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So for me, I think I would go with the 1 transfer. And if you were going to do 2, I might look to make it a smaller move. Because as much as you'd like to get Foden in, I don't know that Foden gives you that much more coming down from Mo. That improvement off of Solanke is actually going to bear fruit in a 1-week spin, and then you have the multiple matches to go with it. So for me personally, my opinion, I would I'd make the 1 move, and I think if you really like Foden this week, I would go there. I personally like Saka better, but if it is Foden for you, then hard to argue the second leading scorer on the best offensive team in the league.
Yeah, I feel like, and we read somewhere that the biggest thing for me is I feel like I am excited about taking that kind of risk on Darwin, because as someone called him a hurricane, you don't know what the hell you're going to get with that guy, and it'll be interesting to see how this weekend shapes up. But I think you're right. I think Perisic was one of those things where, I mean, it's not like he's been a terrible scorer. He's in the top 14, I think it is, but at 5'5", there definitely is some room to move there to another possibility. A part of Arsenal's defense, whether it's Saliba or Gabriel or Ben White. I feel like that could be a good move too.
That is a little bit of what I would say. I think if you're lacking anything here, it might be a piece of Arsenal's defense.
Yeah.
Gabriel drives me crazy because, again, he's another one. Like, I put him in my side, and he kicks a guy in the back of the knee in the 90-minute plus 4 and gets a red card and is suspended for 3 weeks. It's like he's just so. But his goal expected rate, his touches in the box for defenders, his shots on goal, these are all numbers that are like off the charts. Like, not just like good in the EPL, they're like top 10 in Europe. And honestly, his time at Arsenal has really been all a success. You know, I hate saying it. I feel like at some point he will go to a bigger and better club, but when you're top of the table in the EPL and top of your group in a European competition, it's kind of hard to act like you're not actually kind of a big club again. But after one weekend in Philly with all the Arsenal fans, I'm ready to do anything to insult them, because let me tell you, Arsenal fans have to be the most front runners on the whole planet, because they show up in droves when they're winning, because it was like they were still on top and it was 1985. I haven't seen that many Terry Henry jerseys in a long, long time. So here is my side as it stands now. Disclaimer, 7-8 more changes could happen before Saturday morning at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Eastern when the deadline happens for this week. First off, I guess I'll give you the floor to give me just your quick initial thoughts on what you see here, and then I'll give you my reasoning, because there are 2 or 3 things I've done here that break against everything I stand for in Fantasy Premier League.
Let's see. Doc Saliba. I'm surprised to see you go big at the goalkeeping position, changing your keeper, not setting it and leaving it. I think off the last 2 weeks, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything about this. I believe the last 2 weeks has to be the most total points for a goalkeeper in back-to-back weeks in FPL history. I feel it has.
I'm pretty sure it's close. If it isn't the biggest, yeah.
Yeah, it could go from a clean sheet and assist to a clean sheet and a penalty save, and 29 total points, I think it is. So crazy stuff. I like all your defensive choices, all the way down to Trippier. I feel like maybe it's just biased because I have in my team. I can't think of not starting Trippier. I feel like he has to play. He has to be in your starting lineup, and I'm sure you'll have your reason why he's in the bench right now. But I like where you're at with money across your mid and your forwards. The only thing I'm kind of questioning, I like Scamacca as a prospect. I just don't know if right now, if FPL wise, he's getting some chances here and there, but I don't know if he's quite the. I don't know. I feel like you'd be better off investing a little bit more money elsewhere and just starting Holland and Darwin together, and then having another mid that you feel better about, or maybe upgrade someone. I mean, there's no one really upgraded in the defense though, because it's good where it is. So maybe upgrading someone in the mid to then comfortably start all 4 of them in like a 4-4-2 rather than the 4-3-3 that you have now.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't know that I'll finish this in this manner. I genuinely believe that Liverpool is about to go on a run. And I think it all starts with them being more sound at the back and playing better defensively. And they have 3 of their next 4 fixtures that I believe, between Southampton, Forest this weekend. I know they have Spurs, and there's one other one, and all 4 of them are good possibilities for clean sheets.
Leeds.
Unfortunately, what was that?
It's Leeds.
In Leeds.
Yeah.
So, I'm not uncomfortable with the idea of them defending against any of those teams. If I didn't know that I had a wild card in 4 weeks, right, I would never have a $5.4 million goalkeeper.
That makes sense.
My logic behind it is that I can go back to Sanchez and Ward and my cheap set it and forget it's when I get out of the World Cup. But really, at this point, I'm looking at a team that can arguably compete for 4 more weeks. And my thought was where actually do I need extra money in this side when I was thinking about going cheaper at the keeper and getting my 0.9 like I normally would. I mean, is there a huge upgrade from Doherty to a 4.9 defender? I don't know that there is. Not for value. I was thinking the same thing with Guai. Could I go Saliba to someone else? Sure. Like, I started looking around and I was thinking, where am I trying to spend money? Now, I understand this Gamaka play. Since he began to start consistently for West Ham, no striker in the Premier League is getting more touches in the box, more big chances created, and West Ham has great fixtures leading up to the World Cup. So it made me kind of look at it and say, I have to take some gambles here at some point to start to go with a differential that will give an opportunity to make some moves. So I because I won't lie, I had Mitrovic there at one point, and I almost threw up in my own mouth. Because I know what'll happen. It's just inevitable. He'll leave my team, and then he'll get a BS penalty late in a match and drill it for 6 points. There are some moves. I could easily downgrade Allison. I could honestly move Allison to Pickford. I could move Ward to Kepa and then rotate him and pick up 0.4, and then maybe I could take that 0.4 from Scamacca and maybe lower another player, even drop off Mo and go down to KDB. Then I could maybe bring in a Tony. But I'm looking at Tony sitting on the yellow cards, and he picks up another yellow. He's suspended, and I don't really want, I see lots of sides playing Andreas, and I understand there's a talent in the man's body, but there's also just a moment of sheer stupidity at any impasse. And I can't start him. I know what you're saying about Trippier. I just feel like the matchups, and I also feel like Tottenham at home is a different animal than Tottenham away. They play in the single loudest stadium in the world. Like, that's actually a fact. Like, and their supporters get up for it no matter what, because they play in the best stadium in the world. And that's pretty much a fact. Like, it is state of the art. Their supporters love being there. So kind of feel like this is the week to kind of sidestep from Trippier, because I do expect result of some sort from Tottenham. I think they're going to score goals, and I think this renaissance of Eddie Howe has to sort of come to somewhat of a scratching halt at some point. 3 wins out of 4, 4 out of 5 clean sheets. I mean, it's some like top end level numbers, and they haven't even gotten the Saudi money yet. So I think my biggest thing is Darwin and Holland is a great base. I also wouldn't be that upset. I could put Scamacca at my first bench position and start Trippier if by the end of the week I feel better about it. I'll probably drop Allison down and then reinvest. You have me thinking about moving off of Salah and maybe even going to a midfielder and bringing Scamacca up to Kane and just going Kane, Holland, Darwin.
Yeah, I feel like with where you're at before with Kane, and you've been someone that actually has had Kane throughout all these weeks, and given how you feel about Tottenham this week, I feel like it just makes a lot of sense for you to have that 3-headed monster up front potentially. Because I also feel like I don't know. Do you just not have a third City asset that you like enough to put in? Because I feel like going into the World Cup, having 3 Arsenal, 3 City is going to be pretty big. If you can afford it.
There are assets I like. I'll be honest. One of the assets we haven't talked about the whole entire show that I think is maybe, coming out of the World Cup might be the steal of the game is I think Akanji is actually going to start the rest of the year for City. I actually think he's their best center back. It sounds crazy. I've never been a Diaz fan. I think he's been overrated and overhyped since he showed up. Laporte has tried to play for another club at every single impasse and chance he can, which basically is why he takes 3 weeks off when he has a 4-day injury every time. And then you have this Kyle Walker injury, which I think they're finally realizing how important Kyle Walker is to them as Mo runs behind. Cancelo is still wishing Kyle Walker was on the pitch. Because if Kyle Walker was on the pitch, he wouldn't have had to worry about diving in there. Because Kyle Walker would have chased Mo down on the back end. And that's what they don't have. They don't have pace. So I really like Akanji, and at his cheap price. I like Foden. Maybe it's his hair. Maybe it's the look on his face. Like, maybe it's the fact that I know if I met his mom, I would want to like have a few shots and a few rounds, and then like we'd probably get in a fist fight in the middle of the parking lot afterwards. Like, all these things are probably reasons I steer away from Phil Foden. But I know the talent. I just feel like KDB isn't at the races right now, and I think that there are some differentials out there, and I think that's what I was trying to do. Believe it or not, I really, really like having Mo in my side because people still aren't buying into Mo is worth the money.
Sure.
And he's going to have a 2 or 3 week period where he scores 30 points.
Yeah.
And nobody else is. And I think that's where I just don't want to miss getting on that at the right time. And I feel like if I don't bring him in on a wild card, I'm not bringing him in until Boxing Day. But you really you feel more comfortable looking at Spurs fixtures over the next 4 because whatever premium I go into this with, they're staying with me through the whole 4 matches, I think.
Yeah. So let's break it down, right? So Liverpool is away at Forest, home to Leeds, away to Spurs, home to Southampton. Tottenham has home to Newcastle, away at Bournemouth, home Liverpool, home Leeds. 2 of those 4 are incredible fixtures for Kane. Both Bournemouth and Leeds are great fixtures, I think. Whereas Liverpool, you could probably, you've got 3 great fixtures, I guess, Forest, Leeds, and Southampton, right? So it kind of just comes down to that game against Tottenham, game week 15. So from a purely fixture perspective, Liverpool's fixtures do look a little better. But from the Tottenham perspective, if there are going to be returns coming, it's going to be through Harry Kane. I feel like Liverpool have the opportunity to have some guys, like Darwin to be able to take some of those returns away from Mo, where Mo could be part of it. But I feel like anything that goes through Spurs is going to go through Kane. I think that's kind of where I'm at for that, and why I would maybe lean you towards the Holland, Darwin, Kane situation. But I also, but I understand if that's the case, then having either a Mo or a KDB really takes away from the rest of your midfield or the rest of your defense, depending on how you set up elsewhere. So you can't really go, 4-mium. Like you could do 3-mium, but the 4 is just going to be a little too much. So maybe from a fixture perspective, Mo is a better shout considering the 3 of the green fixtures as opposed to Tottenham's 2.
Yeah, I the more you talk, it's making a lot of sense here, thinking about maybe not keeping Mo into that lineup because as I look at it here, it is a gamble having him there at that much money. It's so much money. I could honestly move off of Mo and move off Allison, and I could probably go anywhere I want. I could take Skamaka to Kane. I could probably get as high as Sterling if I really wanted to in midfield, which I don't. So maybe I drop Foden and I go in with Foden there, and then I can use that money to improve Almiron or Andreas even and bring that up. Because again, this is a 4-week play for me. Like anything I do is at a 4-week number. And more I think about it, maybe I can just stay with the high-end keeper and just move off Mo and take all that money down to Foden. That's $5 million. Once I go up to Kane, I'm still going to have $1 million in the bank to improve someone else in this side on my bench. So it probably will be the way that I go. Mo will probably score 45 points on Saturday. But, it's great. I will say this. This is why, if you can, you plan out your chips. And I did plan out my chips to know, like, I'm going to get to 12. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to get through it. And then I'm going to try to run down the World Cup. So this is also about like looking at what other moves I can make. I have a couple ideas of like ways I can make some tweaks on certain match weeks, move Saka to Mount, move Foden to X that I know would be maybe a more beneficial move for that game week. But I think positioning yourself going into the World Cup break, knowing you have unlimited transfers through that period leading up to Boxing Day, I think is a really, really big key, because I think fantasy EPL this year is really going to be key from when they resume on Boxing Day through about the League Cup final in February. I really believe that 5-6 week period where they're playing League Cup matches, FA Cup matches, Champions League matches, they've all been off for the World Cup. We're trying to get guys back to legs. I think that's a key period, like where those green arrows are going to be more important than anything. So with that, if you had one piece of advice to share with our listeners and viewers today, Matoush, on what you have learned so far through 12 weeks of this Premier League season, what would it be?
That's a good question. That is such a good question. I think you should answer it first.
All right. I'll make one up. No, I'm just kidding. I think that in this season, what I've learned more than anything is it's okay to go with the template. And what I mean by that is I think people have gotten cute. And I hear and I watch blogs, I watch podcasts, I listen to blogs, I all these different things. And I hear the craziest shit. Like, maybe this is the week not to have Haaland in my side. Or you have to captain players other than Haaland if you want to move up. If you're not captaining Erling Haaland every week, you might as well not own him. Because you're losing points when he scores. Because 60% of the game has him and 50% of the game is captaining him.
Yeah.
So I think you have to pay attention to what the template is, but then you have to have 2 or 3 options every single week that give you a chance to make moves on the leaderboard. And I think that's why, like, when I first drafted this side and I was looking at guys like Almiron, I was looking at Skamaka, I was even looking at, Doherty. I was looking for players that might play and give me a chance to make a move up the leaderboards. But I wasn't afraid to still roll with the core collection of talent that most of the top players in this game are utilizing today. Sure. Because there's a consistent reason why a player is owned by 70% of the players in the game. He's worth it.
Right.
So for me, it's have conviction, make bold moves. But honestly, you can't be afraid of following the template, because there's a reason it's called the template. It's working for the masses, and you're competing against the masses.
Yeah. That's a good one. I think thinking back to my experience for this year and the last couple of years and consuming so much more fantasy content overall, I think the one thing I've learned is that there's much more to life than fantasy. I feel like there were some weeks where I just felt like garbage because my fantasy team did really poorly. And some of it, and I feel like I have to, at one point, you have to step back and realize, hey, this is just a game. It's supposed to be fun. Don't play this game to try and be the very best and then get upset when you make the wrong moves. You're supposed to still have fun at the end of the day. So if you're finding yourself getting really stressed out about your decision making to the point where you're, just consumed on your phone, trying to ask every single person going through every forum you can to find what that one piece of advice, just take a step back and take a breath and just go, this is a game. All I know is that I have to have Haaland. I have to captain Haaland. And other than that, everything else is fine, because it's all about having fun. So I think while there are, bigger lessons to be learned, I think one is, for me especially, is just to make sure that at the end of the day, I'm still having fun doing this, because if I'm not going to have fun doing this, then there's no point to play.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I completely echo it. I think that the idea that people take it that seriously. And I enjoy the game. I follow it. I get into it. I talk about it with friends. I try to find new people that want to play it and share strategies and talk about ideas. But ultimately, it's just an avenue to follow more of a sport you already love. It's like a reason to watch matches that aren't your match. Yep. If you're not a crazy person like me and plan to watch all of them as much as possible anyways. So, and I think the other big thing, and you made a great point in your comments, is that like it can't consume you. And it's also, it doesn't do you any good to read every article and follow every blog and listen to every podcast if you don't actually digest the information and then make the decision for yourself.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's your team and there's lots of ways to do it. You just have to be consistent and just pay attention. And I think if you do that, you'll improve on it. And ultimately, hopefully, it just brings more enjoyment to watching the matches. And that's what the game was supposed to be for. And, we'll leave it on the idea that, I'm somewhere 500,000, something like that. I was in the top 200 at one point. You're just outside 1 million. I listen to some podcasts and read articles of people who are paid to do this for a living that are in the 4 to 5 million range right now. They get paid. They have sponsorships. They have paywalls on their websites so you can get their advice.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure they would say anything more than, yeah, you should probably have Holland, Darwin, and, Nunez in your side, or Darwin and Kane. And you're like, yeah, thanks, man. It's great. Yeah, awesome. You're 4 million in the world. So I think sometimes people get too caught up in the rank as well. Your mini leagues, your head-to-head leagues with your friends, that should be where your focus is, in my opinion. It should be about winning leagues against people you know. How you stack up against people in India and Indonesia and Russia and America and South America, does it really honestly matter in the long run when there's 10 million people playing the game? It's the 15 people that you know and the 5 that will, really annoy you if you lose to. One of them is looking at me on the screen right now. And he's going to track me down. He's told me that for weeks now. He's going to get me.
If anything, just staying undefeated in the top of the AS Contributor League will be plenty for me.
If you literally run this thing invincible, I will be so frustrated. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm
going to get you a Doug Christie jersey.
It will frustrate me like captaining Mitrovic on a blank game week, which I've done numerous times. It all comes back to Mitrovic, man.
It's just one circle that always starts and ends with Mitro.
It does. It starts with him entering my team. It ends with him lighting the ground on fire as he leaves. So with that, we hope that your transfers work well, your players come through. Pick the right ones, whether you're on a wild card, you're taking the -4, or you're just using your one free transfer. Get in game week 13, raise your scores. Green arrows for everyone, except for my co-host. Have a great week. We appreciate you. If you have comments, thoughts, ideas, please message us. If you like the content, give it a like, give it a subscribe, content, or share with some friends who you think that would like the information. We would love to keep sharing it, and we would love to get the message out to more people. We hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.